Welcome to Healing the Tigress, a podcast of conversations and stories on Asian American Pacific Islander maternal mental health. We are your hosts. I'm Peggy, a perinatal mental health therapist.
And I'm Jasmine, a clinical pharmacist who is perinatal mental health certified. Both of us are Taiwanese American mothers who have lived experiences of postpartum depression and anxiety. It felt like we didn't see anyone who looked like us also struggling with their mental health in new motherhood. But we would go on to learn that it wasn't just us and that there was so much more to perinatal mental health.
So we created this podcast because we know that sharing these stories can begin to break the stigma of mental health in our community, and we want to help heal the inner tigress in all AAPI parents. Let's get started. Hello, Tigress fans. Our next guest shares a beautiful story of motherhood that reminds us once again that there are many paths to becoming a mother. While we've had a few other single moms on our episodes before, our next guest is our first ever single mom by choice. A single mom by choice is by definition an unpartnered woman who chooses to have a child, whether through adoption or pregnancy via donor, choosing to be the sole parent and deliberately planning to raise a child as a single mother.
Please help us welcome Michele Elizaga, a first-generation Filipina American, adventurer and lover of life to the fullest. Her son has Down syndrome, autism, and a smile that will melt any heart. While she is one tired mother, as she tells us, she finds energy in their adventures and loves to share their journey with others. Michele is sustained by her hope for a world where inclusion and equity shape the way we live. Michele, thank you so much for being with us on our podcast today.
Thank you for having me. Excited.
We've shared that you're Filipina American, but would you please tell our listeners what that means to you?
Yes, of course. So both of my parents were Filipino immigrants. Growing up, I have two sisters. So growing up, we would visit family for Christmas. Actually, all of my dad's side of the family would gather together. That's when I would spend time with my cousins. And really, that was kind of the extent of my experience with other Filipinos. And that was when we were younger. As time went on, we weren't able to do that every year. So I would say, unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of exposure to other Filipinos or Asians in general growing up. And at this stage in my life, I just realized how valuable that is. And I'd love to be in relationship with other Filipinos and Asians, people of color in general, but it just hasn't happened and I can't force it. But it's something that I just in today's world, just really understand the value of. And I'm grateful for opportunities, through social media to be able to relate to others, even though I might not be in direct relationship.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to dive into your parenthood journey. So,
okay, let's do it.
While spending what you said was basically your entire adult life as a single woman, what were some of the feelings you were having as you neared the age of 40, this milestone that you've talked about, either longing for a relationship or motherhood?
Sure. So I have to say, I just turned 48 last month. So it's so wild. It feels like yesterday, but gosh, it was 8 years ago.
Can't tell.
Thank you. So truly, my last and only boyfriend was when I was in college. We stayed together for like a year after college. Went our separate ways. I was the one who initiated it. I felt like I needed to find myself and experience life on my own. And 20 years later, I was still doing that. And approaching my 40th birthday, the beginning of every year, we all have our hopes and wishes for what the new year is going to bring. And then I just naturally have my birthday every year. So for years, from 20 years, it was I was just always wishing for that partner. Maybe this is going to be the year. And so going into my 40th, I felt that I'm okay, this is such a huge milestone. And surely I wasn't meant to be single my whole life. And I feel like this could be the year that it's happening. And along the way too, I do recall having a confidence about turning 40, but there was always this underlying part of me that did question, what's wrong with you? You're still single. But But yeah, there was always that underlying, like, as much as I would try to be like, I'm this empowered, independent woman. And so that's sort of where I was at. Like, I was hopeful, and I spent my 40th birthday in Costa Rica. It was epic with my best friend. And I woke up there on my birthday, and I just like sensed deep in my heart, like something big was on the horizon. And so naturally, I'm sure I thought it was a partner, but I knew it was something. Like, it wasn't quite clear, but I remember looking out at the ocean from the balcony and being like, I feel it, like something. That being said, 6 months later, and by the way, I'm approaching 40. I'm single. As far as the family goes, I'm just like, I don't know if this is going to happen for me. I'm getting older. I don't have a partner. And I was okay with that. Like, I was just like, I don't know that, everything will be okay for me to have a baby in the future. And so fast forward to 6 months later, it was actually Father's Day. And I went over to my other best friend's home to catch up with her. In fact, the conversation actually kind of started with like daddy issues. So that's where it started. But as our conversation went on, like, it was just a regular Sunday, just drinking wine on her sofa. I said something along the way in our conversation that she felt compelled at the end. As we were talking, she's like, I just need you to know something. And she said, you can have a baby. I'm going to get emotional again. Like, you can have a baby and you don't need a man to do it. And you will not do it alone. And I just, like, it came out of nowhere. Like, yes, when she said it, like, truly, I just, like, tears, like, it's coming to me now. And I was like, what are you saying? Like, it was like a foreign language, because it was never an option I was given. It's like, you get married, then you have a family. And so it just came out of nowhere. And I truly was disoriented. And I did end up leaving her home shortly after. So I did leave saying, this is so weird. I don't know why I'm responding in this way, but I'm going to sleep on it and just like see what happens. Like this, like it really was like kind of otherworldly. And so I went to bed, and the next morning, just on my mind, baby, 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 baby. And it unlocked this thing that was like buried deep in me, that until this option was presented to me, I don't know that I would have ever considered.
Before this conversation, had you known anyone else that had done this, that had
No,
had a
I
baby?
hadn't. And that's why I think I was just like, what? What do you mean? And actually, I think we did start to, like, she obviously was aware of it, and we might have did a little bit of Googling at that time. But yes, I knew of no one that had done this. So it really was so out of left field, just so foreign to me, the concept of I could have a baby on my own.
It's almost like she sort of unlocked a permission to even think about it.
Exactly.
Right? Because like, you didn't know how, and maybe she didn't exactly know either, but it was like, hey, modern medicine is incredible nowadays.
Yeah.
And it's possible.
Yes, that's absolutely what happened.
Well, it sounded like that conversation was really like pivotal to kicking off kind of your research and figuring out like what the next steps were. So I'm sure if there are any single women that are listening and maybe interested in becoming a mom one day, can you walk us through what was the actual process like of pursuing like fertility treatments or picking a donor? Did you have any special like requests, those kinds of things?
Yes, absolutely. So, like I said, I woke up that Monday morning and I was just like, baby, like, I have got to pursue this. And so I did. I just started Googling, started looking for, I landed on a website for single moms by choice. There were two different ones. I think single mom by choice, and the other term was choice mom. So I got an idea there of just kind of the process of, looking for a sperm donor or using a bank. It just got like more of an idea, and just realized again that like this is totally an option and so possible. So I started, I don't know which came first, but I'll start with the sperm donor. So I started researching like sperm banks, and actually had read a story of like one woman's story about how when it came to picking her donor, she picked someone who actually resembled her because she thought, I don't want my child to have to like, oh, you must get that feature from your father, if they looked so different. I was like, I love that. And I have to say, this was so healing that I was like, I need to look for a Filipino donor. And I say that because I don't know, I always thought my partner was going to be Caucasian and my kids would be half. And that was just kind of what I thought was, the path for me. And so I was so grateful to just pursue that. And I actually only found one at one of the banks. And when I looked at his health history, it wasn't a good fit. Like I was like, I don't know that this is ideal for me. And so then I just kind of opened it up to, let me just find someone healthy and like that is doing this like a good person. And that's what I landed on. I landed on using the Seattle Sperm Bank and landed on a donor that was donating. I mean, it's like they can tell whatever they want in these stories, but I liked it. In his letter to future receivers of his sperm, he wrote that the reason why he felt so compelled to donate sperm is because he had friends who conceived in that way. And he just thought, wow, like had this not been available to them, they wouldn't have been able to have a child. And so he felt like he wanted to give back to others in this way. So I was just like, this is a good, and there were just some other things that he had a Mary Oliver quote in there, like just some things that really spoke to me. And so I purchased the one vial of sperm. That's all I could afford. Mind you, I did not have a lot in my bank account, but I had and I just remember thinking like, this is so crazy. I'm considering having a child, which is going to require a lot more money than I currently have. But I just knew again, like this was what I was supposed to do. And so I purchased one vial of sperm, which isn't actually recommended because it's not likely that you would conceive for the first time. But I purchased my one vial of sperm. And then I also, in the meantime, was doing my research on fertility specialists in the Phoenix area, which is where I live. So did my research there, landed on a doctor and, had my initial appointment at the clinic where we had to do some initial tests to make sure that I had a healthy egg count and that things were just looking good to even be able to do the fertility treatment, which in my case was an IUI, which I'm so grateful for, which was also so much more affordable. And so everything was just moving along. Like everything looked good. Like as far as my fallopian tubes, like they were clear. My egg count was good. Just everything was it was like, go. Like this is the path. And so I ordered the sperm to be delivered to the clinic, set the appointment. And mind you, so it was July, Father's Day. And this is now, it was end of August, I believe, beginning of September. So very quickly after. It's just all moving forward. So I had my appointment with a fertility specialist to have the IUI, which, like I said, everything checked out in a way that it was like, we can try the IUI first. We don't, IVF isn't necessary at this point. So I went for the appointment. He put, the sperm in me, basically, is what an intrauterine insemination is. And what's interesting is he kind of looked at me. Well, it was clear. I should say I don't think he thought he was going to see me again because I had only purchased one vial of sperm and it's very unlikely that it would happen the first time. So I could tell he was like, okay. And he had told me ahead of time that like it would be ideal to purchase more sperm. And I actually had to say to him, like, I don't have enough money to purchase multiple. Like, we'll just try this and go from there. And so he said his goodbye. And I think he thought he was never going to see me again. And then when I took the test, I think it was like 3 weeks later, like they gave me the date. And I actually took it the day before I was supposed to. Like I woke up early that morning and I was like, surely like a day before. Actually, I woke up really early. I think it was like 2 a.m. And I thought, wait, I think I should just try. Like we're a day, like what's the difference? And so I I took the test. I went to the bathroom and took the test, and it so quickly showed the 2 lines, and I just fell to my, like, I could not believe. I'm so grateful. So grateful. And truly, I'm so grateful. My process was so easy. So easy. And I know that's not the case for everyone, but that's mine. And I think that just like it can be yours too, you know? So that's how it all began after kind of the dream surfaced.
What I think is so fascinating is you said this was August, right? And so your birthday was in January. You had this like beautiful moment on the Costa Rican beach. And then just 6 months later, you have this conversation. So from like in a span of just a few months, suddenly you went from I'm single, I'm 40, you have this conversation and you're like, now I am pregnant.
Yes, exactly. It's still like to this day, whenever I lay out the timeline, I'm like, did it really happen this fast? And mind you, I actually would say this. I kind of adhere to different beliefs now, but at the time I was just like, I have prayed my whole life for a partner, and God hasn't given me this partner. And all, like you just said, like this was not even anything I ever prayed for, but obviously I did in that short span, and it happened like that. Like it just, gosh, it was amazing. And just even as like every time I share it, it's just like, this is my, like, it's just my life path. Like this is what it was all supposed to be. Like just, it's always what it was supposed to be. And this was the big thing, obviously, that in Costa Rica that I like sensed that I wasn't quite sure. What is this?
Yeah. I wonder, as you're going through this whole journey, you had the conversation with your friend, and then very quickly you're like, buy the sperm, get the doctor, get pregnant, bam, bam, bam. And
Yes.
we do know from previous guests who are either single mothers or had a period of life of single motherhood that it was often met with a lot of stigma. So as you were entering into this choice and this decision, how did it manifest for you, and or what was your support system like or and currently like?
Yes. So I have an incredible, incredible community of women. I'm so, so grateful for them. They're the loves of my life. And I mean, I named those two, the one in Costa Rica and even the one who I had the conversation with, who are right there in the hospital when I was giving birth to Matthew. So the support system was there. And even again, just going back to that conversation when her name's Stephanie, I actually call her wifey. She's my, but so wifey said to me, you're not like, it's like she knew I needed to hear that. Like, as she laid it out for me, and she's like, and you're not going to be alone. And so I was bolstered by that. And as far as stigma goes, what's interesting is, like I said, my faith at that time, that is where I can't recall anyone specifically saying, actually, there was one, my like adopted grandmother who was in her 80s who did not agree with what I had done. But I kind of felt as I was sharing with people like they were judging me. And not so much, I would say not so much about being a single mom, but that I was kind of playing God, if you will, by doing it in this unconventional way. And so I would say that is more so what I struggled with. But at the same time, kept me going was just like this path that just kept opening up. That to me, I was like, this is so clear. This is God's will for me. You know, so that's kind of whenever I would have feel those insecurities and fears that I was being judged. At the end of the day, I'm like, no, this is the path for me, and I'm not playing God. I believe God is like leading me to this. So
Having that support system to tell you that you're not alone in this, I think that's huge. Like,
absolutely.
because you don't want to, I think that gave you a big green light, actually.
Yes, it was a huge green light. And I also, like I said, one of my sister, I have my younger sister here who lives in Arizona, and then my older sister is in California. But my sisters, we are so different, but we are just so like it's us. Like we know that. So I also knew that too. Like my sisters are going to be there for whatever I need. And actually, my younger sister is Matthew's second mom, and how like I wouldn't be able to do this without her. And at the same time, though, I remember going into this knowing that I was going to be supported, but not like putting that pressure on her, like that you better, like, I'm doing this and I'm going to need you right by my side and you're going to have to, be Matthew's second mom. Like it wasn't that, but I had that confidence that they'd be there to support me, and they have, the both of them.
And you were mentioning this was 8 years ago. So I think maybe back
Yes.
then, and you also didn't have as many examples of women doing that. I feel like I'm hearing this more now, 8 years later, almost a decade later, that there are more and more women choosing to go about approaching motherhood this way, especially if they're like, I just don't have the partner that I'm looking for. And my time is kind of getting there. I hit a milestone and they're saying, but what if it's what I really want is to become a mother? And how, like Jasmine said earlier, modern medicine is so amazing to be able to open this up. And so I imagine that some of even the stigma of what you said was like the playing God piece is actually going away as well, because more and more women are making that choice to say, I'm not going to wait anymore. I'm going to take control of my life and say, this is how I can become a mother.
Yes, it's the most empowering decision I ever made. Again, truly, it's just, I was indifferent about it. Like, I kind of assumed that I would be a mom, but as I kept getting older, I could go either way, but then to realize that, oh no, I do want to be a mom and I can be a mom without a partner. It's incredible. And I wholeheartedly agree. I've been seeing so many more, just like in shows and just different things. Like there's more of an awareness of this path.
Yeah. What was that conversation like when you told your family that you were pregnant? Like, did you tell them you were going to do it before you actually did it? Or was it like, surprise?
So, okay, this is a great question. I forgot about that part. So both sisters knew, but I did not tell my parents because of the fears that I told you about. That they would say, this is not God's will. This isn't how you're supposed to do it. You should be married. Like I was worried about all those things. There was that fear. And the second was, if it didn't work out, I didn't want them to know. I actually, in my 20s, I went back to school to pursue medical school. Like I tried it the first time in college, and then a couple of years later, I was like, oh, let me, I really think this is for me, and I'm going to try it again in my late 20s. And I'll never forget when I called them just sobbing that I didn't get in. And they had retired back to the Philippines. So they were so helpful. Like here I was just like devastated. And I did think of that time a little bit. Like I was like, I just don't want, as much as they may not want me to do this, they also do care about me and don't like to see me disappointed. And so I didn't let them know ahead of time. But the conversation is so interesting. First off, I called them in the Philippines, which at that time, we didn't talk much on the phone. So that had to be, they probably were thinking, uh-oh, like, did something happen? So I called them. My dad answered. I asked if mom was there. He's like, oh, your mom's, I think she was at the market or something, or some church event. He's like, your mom's not here right now. And I was like, okay, well, and I just decided I thought I was going to tell them together, but I was like, I need to tell you something, Dad. And he was like, oh, okay. And I said, first off, I need you to know that I don't have a boyfriend and I didn't have sex, but I'm pregnant.
Good disclaimers.
Yes. And he, being my dad, was just like, oh, okay. Like, I'll have your mom, but like, it was very short. Like the processing of just like, yeah, I'll have your mom. Call later to talk to your mom. And I was like, okay, Dad, which actually that wasn't surprising. Like for him, he was a man of, few words. And again, I'm sure just like the shock. Because again, like they knew nothing. It's so wild to retell this. Like it was out of nowhere just like it was out of nowhere for me. It was the same for them, right? Like, so this is my mom, and speaks to something I just talked about earlier as far as having a partner. And I just assumed he was going to be Caucasian and I was going to have these mixed babies, and just, something it just reinforces the colorism that exists in the Filipino culture. So as soon as I told my mom, she was excited and said, like, congratulations. She wasn't like, she didn't need to put, and the next question was, is the donor white? So my mom. So I just was like, yeah, Mom, I did end up like choosing a white donor, but that wasn't like, yeah, that's just her. But she was
a lot of
excited.
Asian parents and mothers, I think, of daughters, that is a question they think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reality is
So,
there's more white donors than there are donors of color. We've learned in other episodes of people using donors. It is hard to find. Like when you originally were like, it would be great if I could find someone that looked like me. And you found only one, right? Like only one
yes.
Filipino donor.
Yes. So, yeah, that was there, which really I think speaks to that's who my mom is.
That's kind of reminds me of our previous guest talking about how she was mixed race herself. Her partner, is a woman. So they also had to do IVF, and she wanted to find a donor that was half. That's even like harder. She like wanted like a half Asian, half, Caucasian sort of mixed donor. And that was just so hard to find. But again, kind of like you were saying, a little bit wanting to honor your background and heritage and questions for when your child grows up of maybe what was dad like, right? And still DNA isn't what makes a like makes you completely everything, right? But there will be questions. Yeah. And then I think it leads to the next part where you've chosen to bring a child into this world and you got pregnant so quickly, but you got a message that said, hey, come in, we have something to talk about. And so, besides for being a single mother, you were told that your son was going to be born with Down syndrome. So what would you like people to know about the challenges, the joys, all the things about raising a child with special needs?
Yes. Oh gosh, so many challenges and so many more joys. So, yes, I found out at 12 weeks that Matthew had a 9 out of 10 chance of having Down syndrome. And I was shocked because I think I thought everything was supposed to go perfectly because everything was perfect up until that point, which now I can look back and say that was perfect. But at the time, I had very little experience with anyone with Down syndrome. And so, yes, it was definitely initially news I didn't receive well, but I also didn't question like whether I was going to move forward. Like I knew that this was my baby and I was going to have him, which that was also another surprise. I was certain it was a girl and it ended up being a boy. And so, yeah, it was just a lot of shock. At that time, this small church I attended in Phoenix, there was a family that had a son with Down syndrome. And she was the first mom I had spoke to. And we talked and she shared with me her story. She didn't find out until birth and, a big surprise for her. And she actually was already pretty involved in the Down syndrome community. And so she shared that side that it will be, and, you're going to have an amazing son and it will be a good life. And then I'll never forget, I needed to hear it. It was so funny. And I think this kind of speaks to her personality. And she's like, and you know what? Because she had 2 sons. She's like, one thing I know that I won't ever have to worry about with him, her son with Down syndrome. She's like, he's never going to be like a drug addict. She goes, it was my oldest son. There's all kinds of fears. But with him, like, that's something, that's a positive. I just was like, okay. But I took that weekend to really grieve. Actually, even before that, I had a very close friend who met me right after the test. She met me in the parking lot of the OBGYN office. Her first daughter was diagnosed with Down syndrome in utero, and she didn't make it. And so having her sitting there with me, and since then, she had already started following some accounts on Instagram of moms of kids with Down syndrome. So I was clueless about all this. So she just assured me, she's like, I would do anything to be in your shoes. And she encouraged me to like follow these accounts. And so that obviously was really impactful. But again, I still did take the weekend to grieve it being so different than I imagined. And then I just kind of moved forward with, while it was a 9 out of 10 share, it wasn't 100%. I remember just having conversations with friends along the way, like, just like enjoy your pregnancy and, don't like even worry about what, whether it is going to be 100% and at the same time, I wanted to do my like research and be prepared. As we move forward though, ultrasounds did confirm the likelihood. And then that's when I started to read about like possible complications at birth. And so at that time I had really hoped to have a natural birth and do it in a birthing center, but then it in the end the right move was to be in a hospital. Even though Matthew was like showing no major heart conditions, that's a big concern in kids with Down syndrome. And so he didn't have any indicators of that, but it ultimately was good that I was in the hospital, and his birth did not go as I hoped. And I didn't need him until 3 hours. I think it would have been about 3 hours after he was born. But gosh, but he changed my life. Like, it's just the best thing to ever happen to me. And I just don't know any other way but Matthew and me and him having Down syndrome. And actually, it was 2 years ago that he got an additional diagnosis and also has autism, which is just a whole other layer, of needs and just delays like with his development. And it has, those first 8 weeks when he was in the hospital. So he didn't come home. He was in one hospital for 6 and then another for 2. So I just remember it was so, so hard. And it's just so wonderful to look back and to be like, oh, like we're good. And he is like today healthy and well. And again, there have been a lot of hard things just in the day to day. And we had a big scare a year and a half ago with the bowel obstruction. This is a big challenge. Matthew is 6 years old and he's not toilet trained yet. And he had this bowel obstruction and it's just caused, just issues and frequent bowel movements. And even at that time, I remember thinking like, our traveling days are over. How am I going to manage this? He's not toilet trained yet. I just don't know. I can't force this. And it's, again, even a year and a half ago, just thinking that. And we just went to Japan in November and it was the best. Yes, it was the best trip. And I am just committed to giving him a life very similar to the one that I had. Like my dad gave us a lot of opportunities to travel and to go on road trips. And just in Matthew's, for 6 years of life, we have done so much. And again, it's not easy. It has its challenges, toilet training being one, but it's a beautiful life. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. It's just the hardest and best thing I've ever done. Again, I can't imagine Matthew any other way. He's incredible. When I found out that it was likely he had Down syndrome, I received the news from my nurse practitioner, who had been my nurse practitioner for 15 years. And one of the things she said to me as I was sobbing in that office was, I just want you to know that most babies with Down syndrome do not make it to 12 weeks. And she's like, but he made it to 12 weeks. Like, he is strong. And it's a miracle that he's here. And so then after he was born, a hospital chaplain came to visit me. And what he said is, he goes, some believe that before we enter this world, we're given an option to see what's to come in our life. And Matthew got to see that he would have Down syndrome and he would have this disability and some medical issues. But he also saw that you would be his mom. And so he said yes to this life. Like, he chose this life. And that idea that he chose me, even though I was like it was this thing that I just knew as things just kept moving forward. Like, I was a single mom by choice. Like, I was choosing this, like, ultimately, like that. Oh, that's such a good reminder even now that gives me strength. Like, he chose me, like, for this. It's everything. So yes, I remember that story just being so fresh after he was born. And it's such a good reminder even now. All the time. It's such a good reminder, especially in the hard stuff.
I just love their optimism for life, and seeing through all the hard things is just a beautiful reminder that we can do hard things, and there are people that love us and support us and are willing to be on this journey with us. And I think that's why we loved your story so much. And we were like, gosh, we gotta like talk to her. You're like, I can just tell your optimism is like
thank
so
you.
infectious,
Thank you. I do have a really cool story that I just feel compelled to share after you said that. Like, as far as community goes, like after Matthew was born, it's so wild that the support that came in that I wasn't even expecting. So much so there was someone at where I worked at that time who felt compelled to help. Like, I had some additional hospital bills for Matthew, and like he said, after he was like, I would like to be able to help you like in a bigger way, not just, and he helped me pay off some hospital bills. It was just a little over $1,000 too. Like, I just like the way, gosh, yeah, the way just like everything rose up to support me. Oh, this is a fun fact. My sister had a connection to the Ellen show was on at that time. And so, how she did her Mother's Day show every year and gave away all these free things? She got me onto the Mother's Day show that spring when I was pregnant. So I got hooked up with so much gear. It was unreal. Like, just when I told you I barely had anything in the bank. And then like everything was it just all came.
Yeah. Well, I think this whole time we've been calling it single mother by choice. And whose choice was it? And we think it's the single mom's choice, but what if it's the baby's choice? What if it's Matthew's choice? And he chose you. And I think that part is so beautiful. Like, I think about you on the Costa Rican beach, and maybe it's like, he's like, I'm coming. There's my mama. I'm going to come,
That's so beautiful. You're right. Maybe what I was sensing was like, he's like, I'm on my way, mama.
Well, it was like almost 9 months later. So when she did right?
Yes, exactly.
We have one final question. I know that you've also mentioned that you've had to take care of your own mental health needs when it came to your own diagnosis of ADHD in your late 20s. What would you like other parents to know about managing their mental health and perhaps even addressing the stigma of like medications when it comes to parenting at your fullest?
So, yes, I was diagnosed with ADD in my later 20s when I went back to school to pursue pre-medicine again. And it was life-changing for me at the time. And stimulant medication, I was like, yes, whatever can help me. My grades, like, complete turnaround for my first time in undergrad. And so they very much helped me. But interestingly, along the way at that time in my late 20s, there was a medication change that was just, it threw my nervous system off completely. I actually had to withdraw from classes. Like, it took me a while to recover. And then I kind of went to the other extreme. I'm like, I don't need medication. I can do this without. Let me look into all these other natural ways. And then again, I love the opportunity to always change your mind, right? In life and just evolve. And so fast forward to, I think it was like in my later 30s, maybe beginning 40s, I realized the need for medication again. And I started to recognize that it really is about living life to the fullest. Like, if it's something that is going to provide that opportunity for me, then absolutely, I'm on board with that. And actually, as of recently, it's kind of been on and off again, which actually is, you can do with stimulant medication recently. And who knows if it's hormonal now or what, but stimulant medication wasn't a good fit for me. Like, after I had Matthew, just, oh my gosh, it's just bananas to me. Like, the work stuff in my brain, all the chores at home, all the things for Matthew, the therapies, the appointment, like, it is so much. And it was so overwhelming. And I recognized I needed to pursue medication. And I actually did try it, and it wasn't a good fit. And so, grateful for options. So just tried, a non-stimulant medication. And I've been taking that for probably about 2 years now, maybe. And again, what's interesting is I lately I'm like, is this really doing anything for me? I think I'm good. And I think I might have a trial because it's been a while just to see. But also, yeah, well, again, just always being open. Like I believe, I just don't adhere to like no medication. Like it's bad. It's like, just that like those very extremes. There really are a lot of options, and medication is one. And also therapy. I recently started, again, I've done therapy on and off, and actually kind of addressing some things that I spoke about earlier last year. I realized I needed a therapist who was not white. Like my therapists have all been white, and I didn't end up, I didn't find an Asian therapist. Well, ultimately just in my search, my therapist is Black now. And it's just a whole other level of just healing and just like that processing that's so needed. And so I have to do and I'm an older mom. Like I've just got to do everything to make sure that, yes, I'm at my best for Matthew, because it is a lot. I am not going to sugarcoat that. It's a lot, but I'm doing everything I can for me, and I've got my support system, and that's the only way I can do it.
Well, we love your story, and we're so glad that you get to be the face for the first time on Healing the Tigress of who a single mother by choice is and your story. I mean,
thank you for choosing me.
Totally. And we end all our episodes with this final question where, in honor of healing your inner tigress, if you today, freshly 48-year-old you, could go back in time, and it doesn't have to be whatever version of you could go back to and tell her something, what would you tell her?
Yeah. Gosh, there are a lot of versions, but I think just even in the last few years, that obviously it took me this long, I'm 48, to learn, that I would go back and tell probably as early as my teens. Like, I want her to know that it's okay to experience any emotion. I think I was only comfortable, like joy is natural for me. And that's a very positive emotion that, and I think I would only allow myself to experience joy and sadness, anger, and namely, I should say that there's a place for it. And I would want her to know that, to give her permission to experience every emotion, not to live there, but to experience it. Because truly, I guess even just living life fully, right? Like that's the human experience, to experience all the emotions. And so, yes, I would go back to so many versions of myself that needed to hear that.
You have to feel to heal.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. I love that.
Fun little therapist quip that people always say, you got to feel to heal.
That's so, how have I never heard that? I guess I needed to right now. Yes. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much for your time today, Michele. And where can our listeners find more of you if they wanted to connect with you, learn more about your story, and see your fun travels?
Sure. Yes. Right now, I'm just on Instagram, and it's just my name, at Michele with one L, Elizaga, Elizaga. And that's where you can find me. And yes, that's where I love to share our adventures, because I want others to know that they're, no matter what, their kids can experience life to the fullest.
Well, that's how we found you.
Thank you.
And we will definitely link that in our show notes. And again, just really wanted to say thank you for letting us share your story and give other moms a glimpse at how beautiful this life can be, and truly how wonderful, all moms are.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
We want to thank you deeply for tuning into this episode of Healing the Tigress. The more we share these stories, the more we can help our AAPI mothers and partners. If you enjoyed this episode and our mission, you can help us out in the following ways. Follow our show wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating and or a review, and share our podcast with a friend.
We also encourage you to follow us on Instagram at Healing the Tigress, where we hope to build a community of healing tigresses and give you updates on what's coming. And if you want more bonus episodes, please check out our show notes for how to subscribe to our exclusive content. Or you can also head over to our Buzzsprout page at healingthetigress.buzzsprout.com. We are not for profit. We are here to help our community, but any support you give us is so deeply appreciated. Above all, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being here.
Healing the Tigress is produced and edited by Peggy and Jasmine.
Music for this show is remixed by Dr. Tony Huynh of Tony Mixes.
Our intro music is a cover of You and Me by Z Avi, played by our co-host Peggy.
Our outro music is a cover of Green Island Serenade, played by Jasmine's sister.
Cover art design is by Dr. Angela Chung.